you love God and your neighbor, you're building the kingdom. That's your job as a confirmed Catholic. Build the kingdom. Love God, love your neighbor, there you go. I'm going to end with this story. And by the way, if any of you appreciated anything I said today and you'd like to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, or any of those, I have a flyer here. You can take a flyer. It has my website and all that stuff. And you can do that. I'm going to end with a story, though. This little boy, Edward, was 6 years old when it first happened. When Edward was 6, they found out that he had epilepsy, which would bring on seizures. And so they put him on medication. Edward had to take 9 pills every day, starting from age 6. And these pills helped him so that he wouldn't have seizures. But some of the medication acted as depressants. Edward had very low self-esteem. Some of you know this story. It's okay. Edward had very low self-esteem. He'd walk the hallways with his head down all the time. When Edward got to first grade, found out that he couldn't speak very well, they put him in speech therapy. But because he was in special classes, hurt his self-esteem more, and kids picked on him and bullied him. When he got to 8th grade, graduation ceremony, Edward won an award for being the quietest of his 8th grade class. The summer before high school, he was further depressed, but he went to church. Edward had one thing going for him. He had a strong faith life. And so Edward went to church and he prayed, and he heard God say these words, "Don't give up, I have a plan for you." Edward didn't know what the plan was that God had, but he figured if God had a plan for him, he better stick around. So Edward decided that day that he'd stop feeling sorry for himself. Edward went to high school and he forced himself to make friends. And he tried to go out for sports and he tried to build his self-esteem. By senior year, his life was transforming and changing. The boy who couldn't look up in the hallway in high school was now performing on stage in front of hundreds of people in theater productions. Edward would graduate high school, go to college, and of all things, the boy called retarded because he couldn't speak well, joined the speech team in college and started winning awards for his speeches. That's what happens when we put our hope and faith in Jesus Christ. Anything becomes possible when you know God is on your side. I'm here to tell every one of you before I leave, God has a plan for every single one of you. God has a plan for you. It's going to take years before you figure out what exactly it is, but trust that God has a plan for you. Plug into the Holy Spirit, and you will receive those gifts to live a life that's not just joyful, but fulfilled. Of course, as many of you know, Edward grew up to become someone you know. Edward grew up to be me. My middle name is Edward, and I was the boy who had epilepsy, taking 9 pills a day. I was the boy in speech therapy called retarded because I couldn't speak very well. And in 8th grade, I was voted the quietest of my 8th grade class. When I started my own speaking company 25 years ago, I got the award from my mother, who had kept it all those years, to John Edward Grossman, the quietest award. I had that sucker framed. It now sits in my office where I book speaking engagements across the country. 1.6 million people later, I'm living the plan that God had planned for me all along. God has a plan for you too. Confirmation's just the beginning. You're about to be initiated into the Roman Catholic Church and be given the gifts of the Holy Spirit to go make a difference in the world. So go make a difference. Don't graduate. Get busy. God bless you. Thank you very much.